On this edition of the program, a little scuttlebutt about the Georgia Senate seat. I have a few takes on Kamala Harris almost assuredly deciding that she's running for president and not governor. And Josh Jennings joins the program because I want to talk about 90s FEMA conspiracies and how they connect to our world today. It's a black helicopter kind of episode. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for August 1st. Holy moly, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in Austin, Texas. Oh, how this year has grown wings and flown. Already down the final stretch of summer. Hopefully everybody has gotten their vacations in. We're on the countdown to our gorgeous little girl, baby Bella's first birthday. Very excited about that. And I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for subscribing to the Substack for this show. Now, I don't know which account. I assume she's using an alt, But on our Thursday episode, when she revealed that she was not running for governor and said, essentially declared herself as running for president, I said, "Look, lady, you got to be out there. You got to be out there. You can't just be sitting back, unburdened by what has been, man. The people, your people, demand to hear from you." Well, what'd she do in the intervening 6 hours? She wrote a book, announced that she's selling the book. She's going to be on Colbert. I think for many of you, she will have already been on Colbert by the time that you hear it. Well, thank you, and you're welcome. This is why I say these things. I've got more thoughts about Kamala Harris. That'll be in the update. We have Josh Jennings. If you are not aware of FEMA conspiracies of the 90s, then you're going to enjoy it. This is something that for blue staters like myself, if it weren't for the fact that I was an overcurious sicko, I would have no idea what FEMA conspiracies are because they were not a part of my daily life. They were a part of Josh Jennings's daily life as he was growing up, and we are nearly the exact same age. I thought about those when I heard people talking about ICE and the growing role, the possibly extra constitutional role that ICE could take on. And I found it very interesting because I heard echoes of some of the FEMA conspiracies from the 90s. We talk all about it. It's a great chat. But I want to talk to y'all about Georgia. Okay. Georgia has 2 Democratic senators. One of the biggest things that could have happened in 2020, aside from Donald Trump losing, was both Republican senators getting the boot. And so far, we have had one run for his seat again, Raphael Warnock, and now John Ossoff is going to do the same. A lot of people have a lot of really good feelings about John Ossoff in terms of his ability to run as a candidate. I'm not that big of a fan. I think he's fine. But in a low turnout election that should favor Democrats, as an incumbent, I would like him against most anybody that's not Brian Kemp, the current popular governor of that state that can fairly effectively move between some of the hard to win counties, the suburban counties of Atlanta, and play well enough and activate enough of the MAGA crowd on the outskirts that, the Marjorie Taylor Greene types, that he can win. He's demonstrated it a few times. He's got a great political machine, and he's got first bid dibs on the top talent of the state. Well, Brian Kemp decided that he wasn't going to run. Apparently he had to save more time for pointing guns at his daughter's boyfriends. Look it up in the lore. Not really. He did it in a campaign ad. Anyway, I don't know why I explained that. So the big question is, who's going to run against Jon Ossoff? Because if this is not a big Democratic-leaning environment, then you would imagine that Georgia, being a red state in 2024, they'd have a pretty good shot at it. And the big people that you would have to wonder on who's going to play the kingmaker are, of course, Big Chungus up there in D.C. He's going to pick somebody in Georgia. And then Brian Kemp. So let's get one massive name that's definitely not going to run. She has not only ruled herself out for governor, she has ruled herself out for the Senate, and that is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to make it very clear. Marjorie Taylor Greene would win the primary in Georgia. Marjorie Taylor Greene would probably lose by anywhere between 6 and 8 points in the general. That's my opinion. Marjorie Taylor Greene is electricity, OTP, as they call it with the Atlanta area, that is outside the perimeter. She would have people jumping out of their F-150s and doing backflips if she could run for a higher office. And she is poison to the Republican-leaning counties that are inside the perimeter. It's a tricky electorate in Georgia, and there's a reason why Brian Kemp has been able to bring some of those respectability politics and marry it with the idea that, the suburban people, they like the policies, they don't like the delivery, and they really don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she took herself off the board before. She's written now 2 Bible-length tweets about it. So you can go ahead and read into that if you want. Okay. So there's a few people that have announced, Buddy Carter and Mike Collins. We're going to get back to them in a second because we want to focus on where Brian Kemp is. All right? You would think when you are heralded, and let me tell you this, in Republican circles in Georgia, Brian Kemp is heralded a lot like Ron DeSantis is in Florida. Well, really, those are the only 2 comps. Transformative governors of their state, red state governors. The difference is that Ron DeSantis has consistently fought against the establishment, the good old boy network in Florida. Brian Kemp is pretty well of it. So you would assume that somebody that finds himself in that scenario would have what they say, to use a football analogy, and we're about to get very ball heavy here, is a coaching tree. You have the head coach, but then if the head coach trusts a bunch of assistant coaches, well, when there's an opportunity to be a head coach somewhere else, those are the people that folks are going to look at. And if the head coach steps down or decides not to continue, you would imagine that the first choice that the head coach would make to replace him would be the assistant. So I've been poking around with a few people that I know who know some things. I'm just kind of asking, like, hey, so who's the dude for Kemp? And I kept hearing a name that I just didn't really even take seriously. It didn't make any sense to me. And that is Derek Dooley. Derek Dooley. Derek Dooley was born in Athens, Georgia, as was Brian Kemp. He was the son of a legendary University of Georgia ball coach, head ball coach. And he went on to coach himself as a head coach for the Tennessee Volunteers, poorly. And then went on to serve in assistant capacities in Missouri and Alabama. that was his last gig. I think it was in the waning days of Nick Saban being the head coach there at the Crimson Tide. Now, note, what I have told you is a bunch of college football jobs. College football jobs are not elected offices in the state of Georgia. Hell, he didn't even coach ball in Georgia. He didn't coach ball at UGA. He didn't coach ball at Georgia Tech. The man has not even coached in the Peach State. And yet, I kept hearing, well, you know, Kemp, he really believes in Derek Dooley. He really believes in Derek Dooley. He really believes in Derek Dooley. And then this is what I heard this week. They're like good friends. Specifically, one of Kemp's like best friends is related to Derek Dooley. So then I was like, okay, well, you know, stranger things have happened. Maybe this Derek Dooley guy, maybe he's a great, he's an untapped political resource. Because, you know, you can do worse with football coaches. I forget who said it, but like no Republican majority exists in the House and Senate unless you have at least 2 football players. So, all right, makes sense. But if you're looking at the idea of celebrity candidates, which right now, high time for celebrity candidates. One of them is the president of the United States. It used to be thought to be a death trap, but if you work hard, you leverage your name recognition, and you get your nose in the middle of a bunch of current political fights, you can make it work. So I went and looked for Derek Dooley's social media. Nothing. His last tweet was an appearance on an Outkick the Coverage podcast a year ago. Okay. You know, if I were him, Derek, look, you might not know me. I'm Justin Robert Young, but Kamala Harris totally listened to my podcast and changed her opinion on how much she needed to be involved in the race. You need to get involved in things. Derek, you got to get on Newsmax every day. I've been on Newsmax once this week. If you've been on Zero and I've been on Newsmax more than you, that means you've got to work harder at this. You've got to be on Fox News any old moment that you can. You need to go up to DC and be on the Ruthless podcast. You need to go be on Megyn Kelly's program. You need to go do each and every one of them. You need to go on Candace Owens and talk about how Emmanuel Macron is sleeping with a man. That's what you have to do. The reason why you have to do it is that you have to reestablish yourself not just as the football man who never coached in Georgia. The football man now is politics man, in the same way that TV man, Donald Trump, tabloid man, Donald Trump, businessman, Donald Trump, became politics man. He didn't just walk down the golden escalator having come right off the set of The Apprentice. That was certainly part of it. But anybody who paid attention to conservative media at that time knew that he would not turn down any opportunity to be on conservative media. He would express his full-throated political opinion on any issue that was given to him because he knew that that was cultural worth. And I'm not saying you have to be Donald Trump. Nobody is going to be Donald Trump at least when it comes to sponging up media. What you can do, my friend, is say something. You got to be out there. Now, the people that I talk to don't believe that Derek Dooley is going to do that. They don't believe that Kemp World is particularly enthused about being remarshaled, because you had a lot of people that were like coming together for a dream team of let's get Brian Kemp to the Senate. And then all of a sudden people are like, okay, so Kemp's not doing it? Ah, Jesus, I guess I got to figure out something else to do for next year. And then they start getting calls back and they're like, hey, you want to get hired for that job, but it's for Derek Dooley? And they're like, Kemp World's not enthused. Okay. So that means that Derek Dooley is certainly not going to clear the field. So let's go back to those two people that have already announced. Buddy Carter, Mike Collins. Of those two, Mike Collins would be the front runner. In fact, the only thing that I think that I heard is a problem with Mike Collins is that he's got a man in his shop that is an absolute loon. This dude is unhinged, and he's rubbed people the wrong way inside of Georgia. Apparently, he rubbed some of his ex-employees the wrong way because yesterday in the Daily Mail, they popped him for the fact that he hired his girlfriend. Anyway, Mike Collins is going to run, or is running. He's announced to run. It is common wisdom amongst the people that have wisdom commonly that if Derek Dooley runs this whatever half-ass shambolic campaign that he's going to run, that Mike Collins is going to buzzsaw his ass. And so if Mike Collins runs and Mike Collins wins, because Buddy Carter's kind of a non-factor here, then he's probably going to poll really well and he's probably going to get the Trump endorsement. And that is the other side of this. Let's do a real quick rewind to talk about Trump and Kemp. Not exactly best of friends. Donald Trump and Brian Kemp actually had a bit of a frosty relationship even during COVID because Kemp, like Ron DeSantis, were opening things up a little bit faster than Donald Trump wanted at the time. So he had a few cross words for Brian Kemp, but then they got back on the same page. Except there was that whole Donald Trump couldn't win Georgia thing. And so Trump got very mad, and it was Atlanta, and it was Ruby Freeman. And Donald Trump had a lot of very, very mean things to say about Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State. He tried to run primary candidates against both of them, and they both smoked him. Raffensperger and Kemp just didn't even break a sweat ripping through the Trump challengers back in the midterms 4 years ago. So the rumor had been that Kemp and Trump wanted to talk and figure out a common candidate. But if Kemp is dead set on Derek Dooley, then there ain't nothing that you're going to see for that. So what does this mean, brass tacks? It means we got to watch to see whether or not Derek Dooley microwaves himself into a decent candidate. I'm going to say long shot, but who knows? We're going to see if Mike Collins continues to have his momentum and how fast he gets the Trump endorsement. And then we'll see what the polling is going forward. If Mike Collins is the candidate in the, if he's the Republican candidate, then in the general, his full name is going to be Mike Collins, the man who wrote the Laken Riley Act. Because he did it. He's going to get it tattooed on his face like Post Malone, and he is going to make John Ossoff answer for any and all conversations about trans athletics. And for the Laken Riley Act, of course, the Laken Riley was a medical student who was murdered by an illegal alien. It's going to be a lot of border, a lot of Biden, a lot of trans stuff. And then there's this. So I've heard nothing about this, right? But it got me thinking. So let's say that this Derek Dooley thing kind of falls apart fast. And let's say that Kemp World does not like Mike Collins for any number of reasons. And everything I've heard about Georgia is that things do get a little fractious, inside the Republican sphere. Not everybody is good old boys together. There might be a good old boys network, but, there are inter-party rivalries, let's say. And let's say it's the fall when things are really starting to get going. And let's say for this thought experiment that the economy's good. Okay. Well, would you be shocked to hear Brian Kemp is reconsidering? Oh, maybe. You know, he made that decision back in April when we didn't know what was going to happen with the tariffs. If we get to around, Thanksgiving and things seem to be pretty good with the economy, well, it'd be something to see. All right, update, and then we got Josh. This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I don't know why I went Irish there. If you are a paying member, you get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Thank you, Kamala Harris, for subscribing to the program. 6 months ago, Vice President Harris met privately with black congresswomen, as written in a new Politico explainer. She advised them to stay true to themselves ahead of a second Trump term. According to the women in the room, she has now taken that advice herself. Despite expectations in polling that made her the frontrunner to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom, Harris has decided not to run for California governor. While her team explored a campaign and felt confident she could win, Harris's heart simply wasn't in it. The former vice president returned to a state in crisis and remained cautious about re-entering public life. A reflective trip to England helped finalize her decision. Though out of elected office for the first time in 2 decades, Harris still sees a national role for herself. She may campaign with Democrats, start a nonprofit, or focus on issues like AI and Gen Z. Close allies say she's exploring how to make change from outside the system rather than rejoining it. I think she's running for president. And here's my first thought. If and when she does, she is going to be a tremendous boon. But not to her. It's going to be a boon to the party. It's not going to be for her. Because she is going to be a walking sigil for the Biden administration. An unpopular administration that was shown to be lacking by America when it came to the ballot box, since they tried both members of that ticket at the top. I am telling you right now, it doesn't matter if it's after she announces, before she announces, 5 minutes after you hear me say this. Attack Kamala Harris if you want to be the next president of the United States from the Democratic Party. Swing away. Swing away. Smash her. Gavin, crush her. Pete, crush her. Rahm Emanuel, squish her like a bug. Democrats aren't happy with how things went. Independents aren't happy with how things went, and Republicans will have nothing to do but sit around and giggle. But if they're sitting around and giggling, then they're not getting their own message out, because the number one message is going to be what it has to be for Democrats. The unpopular portions of our party are being excised, and I am the agent of change. I don't know why they haven't done it yet, to be totally honest with you. The United States has struck a trade deal with South Korea, imposing a 15% tariff on South Korean imports while exempting U.S. exports. The deal includes a $350 billion investment fund and a commitment from South Korea to purchase $100 billion in U.S. energy products. Add them to the list of Japan, the EU, Vietnam, and Great Britain that have done the first step of the 3-step dance that we previewed, but a week ago. This is finally starting to happen. I actually would have expected more market reaction to it. Let's see, where was the Dow? The Dow today, it's at a couple down days. It was flirting at the beginning of this week with an all-time high. And now it is down to 44,000. So again, it's like number go up, number go down. But I would have thought that this would have had more of a reaction to it, because all you ever hear is like lack of certainty, lack of certainty, lack of certainty, lack of certainty. The Trump administration has, at least over the last few weeks, demonstrated that things are moving in their direction. Or at least you assume they're moving in their direction, because, I'll tell you what, the reaction to the EU deal from Europeans, geez. Also in trade news, Donald Trump extended the pause on Mexico to facilitate continued dialogue. Also, the court hearing began on whether or not he has been able to use the federal authority that he is currently justifying to create these tariffs. So I think he might want to wrap it up, start making these deals. Finally, construction on a $200 million ballroom adjacent to the White House East Wing is set to begin in September. The project, which is funded by President Trump and donors, will be completed before the end of Trump's term in 2029. I was talking to somebody the other day that there are a few things that Trump has these idiomatic responses to. Whenever you mention the NFL, he bitches about the kickoff rule, that the kickoff rule is bad. Whenever he talks about, certain things, he brings up certain things immediately. He loves talking about this ballroom, that the White House has a terrible facilities for hosting big galas, that they usually have to make tents outside. In fact, the last time I was in DC, they had a big old tent outside the White House, and it was for some kind of foreign reception. But that the existence of a big old ballroom will make state visits all the more classy, and you'll be able to do X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. So Trump the builder, he's going to actually put something on the White House. I can only guess what it'll be called. The Trump Ballroom, right? There's no way it's not called the Trump Ballroom. That is your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 a week. If you'd buy me a cup of coffee, then it's already happening. 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Kamala Harris's favorite. And now Josh Jennings. It is my absolute pleasure to bring on somebody that I have long been friends with and very much respect, not only for his political but comedic mind, Mr. Joshua Jennings. How you doing, buddy?
Thank you. And I am doing very well. How are you today?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. And, I've been looking for a reason to bring you on. And then the other day, I think it was actually our mutual friend Andrew Heaton's podcast that I was listening to. And there was somebody talking about how ICE, the new One Big Beautiful Bill, gives a lot of funding for ICE. And they had made mention that this could possibly, they don't know for sure, could possibly become the government's and the president's private army that would lead to fascism, right? Now, whatever you think of that particular example is what it is. But it got me thinking of there was just something about it that hit another nerve in my head. And I'm like, there's something, beyond just whatever you think of that claim. It's and then it came to me while I was going somewhere else. I was like, oh, it's FEMA conspiracies. This is a mirror opposite of FEMA conspiracies from the 90s. And I'm like, man, who could I bring on to just nerd out about FEMA conspiracies? And I'm like, you want to know who would probably be into it? Jennings. And so I texted you and you were like, oh, hell yeah. Let's talk 90s FEMA conspiracies. And so now we're going to start there. When I say FEMA conspiracies, what's the first thing you think of?
Oh, well, as somebody who kind of grew up in the fever pitch moment of that, I was actually around people every day growing up who were into that, who believed in a lot of it. The first thing that popped into my head just out of the blue was black helicopters.
Black
which I hadn't
helicopters.
thought about. Like the title Black Helicopters had not popped into my head for probably 20 years. And then you brought FEMA conspiracies and just like an acid trip from 30 years ago. It just all of a sudden washed over me again. Yeah, that's Black Helicopters was the first thing I thought of. And then of course, kind of everything that was around it. I mean, the fact that like we're thinking of it as conspiracy theories in the 90s.
Yeah.
The whole thing starts way back before that. I mean, it starts way back in the 70s with like the American Patriot movement, back before we were even born.
Mm-hmm.
But it just sat there and cooked in the American mind. And then by the time that we roll around, it's.
Well, I have a reason why it gets to a fever pitch in the 90s, but just for folks who are totally unaware, right?
Yes.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency is established in 1979 to coordinate disaster relief, right? And that's part of the thing. So if you're listening to this, you're like, FEMA, like Hurricane Katrina, and like the people that couldn't get, tents to people in like North Carolina last year, like, yes, exactly the same organization, right? But the reason why this becomes a major thing is that FEMA is invested with the ability to have limited martial law powers. And you would imagine that that's realistic if you're coming into, I mean, a lot of times martial law is declared on a state level by the time that a disaster happens. But I guess this is just in case the disaster is in the Capitol and maybe there is some issues with leadership, or maybe you have uncooperative leadership, or God knows what. But
it's the Red Dawn scenario, and every state has a major problem going on.
There we go. Yeah, and so the federal agency has the ability to tell the citizenry, stay home, presumably because we need to clean up the gigantic mess that happened by way of a natural disaster.
Right.
But that's not what people hear, Josh. What do people hear when they're told that there's a federal organization that has martial law powers?
They hear internment camps. They hear internment camps is the big one. They hear they hear basically everybody, dissidents, people who don't have the right opinions are going to be hauled off and gotten rid of. They hear population control, like with finally some sort of cover that you can throw over it so that the rest of the citizenry doesn't question it too much. They hear conspiracy. They hear what I think the best description I've ever heard was Sam Harris, which was, he said that conspiracy theories are the pornography of doubt. And I think that's the most apt description I've ever heard.
Yeah, I always tend to try and understand the roots of that doubt. That's what I always, when I look at anything that is dubbed a conspiracy theory, which I think we say, I mean, certainly in modern politics, I think we say a lot way too loosely. Like anything that is, diametrically opposed to your point of view, people tend to call a conspiracy. But in this scenario, you have the backdrop from the 70s on, especially through the 90s, of globalization. We are beginning to understand, obviously the UN has long been in existence, but that doesn't mean that there's not creeping worry about international control of the American government. And this goes back to 1960 with the Pope possibly controlling Kennedy if we have a Catholic president. And like the John Birch Society. I mean, this also kind of comes together with communism, right? The idea that there's an international order that is going to regulate the last bastion of freedom, America, and bring to it a communist order, which I guess back in the 70s and the 80s is not crazy as you were looking at the USSR and China, right?
Yeah, I think you absolutely have the right approach, which is to take anything called a conspiracy theory and look at its root and say, where is this coming from? I mean, to continue Sam Harris's analogy just slightly, every bit of pornography starts with a couple of people getting together and go, hey, let's make a movie. So there's something to it. There's usually something behind it. And I think you are like, you would not be wise to assume that there's never anything to any conspiracy theory, including this one. I mean, so with the FEMA issue, you have something coming out in I think it's 1984, the Rex 84B Readiness Exercise 1984 Bravo, which
this is under Reagan, for the record.
Yes,
under Reagan.
Yeah, this literally is a plan for a kind of team up of FEMA with the Department of Defense to sequester 500,000 people who are deemed by the government as national security threats. Yeah. And to put them into camps. Like there were like 22 military bases that were selected, that this is where they would have taken these people. And it kind of had a broad application of power. It didn't get used, thank God. Yeah. By the way,
for the record, this is put in to battle against a literal Red Dawn scenario. Yes, this is about a left-wing communist uprising. That is what the reason for this is for. But and this is something that we talk about a lot with any kind of particularly activist government, and Trump's White House certainly is a F it, we're doing it kind of leadership style. But you got to be careful about the guns you leave around, because you're not always going to own that house. And so that is a huge accelerator for this, that there is an actual plan, by the way, drafted in part by Oliver North, who had a very colorful career, that says, look, here are the bases. We will put X amount of people in a confined camps, as if they're concentrated somewhere.
Yeah. By the way, do you know who broke that? Who broke the story? I think it was in 81 that it came out that was, because that was secret. It was not let out to the public. I think it was 87 that it came out, and it was the Miami Herald. It was from your home state.
Hey, look at that!
Florida
breaking
man done himself proud.
Breaking that and Epstein. This is a great time for the Herald. Yeah, I'll tell you what, that might have been Heaton's greatest addition. There may or may not have been a new Dave Barry column and breaking news about FEMA's extra constitutional powers to create concentration camps.
Right. Speaking of Heaton, by the way, the very first time I ever even heard of Jeffrey Epstein, interestingly enough, was from Andrew Heaton, because he was telling me, I don't know, 5-6 years
about
maybe
all the fun he had on his vacation.
Right, yeah. I'm well aware of the continuing I swear I was not on the island story from a very suspicious Andrew Heaton. Yeah. No, he was telling me years, I don't remember how many years, but years before I'd ever even heard of Epstein, and certainly before all of the news broke around him. He's like, yeah, there's this guy, and he's really shady, and he's probably involved in child prostitution and stuff like that. And, but he seems like he's probably going to get away with it, and all of and then it just kind of was, it was just a thing that he talked to me about. And then sure enough, a few years later, it came out. So I don't know why he sat on that and didn't
he knew
let it out.
Yeah,
what is going on, Heaton? The people demand answers.
So let's get into the 90s acceleration of this. Obviously, there is, like we mentioned before, the John Birch Society. If you're not familiar with them, that's worth a deep dive Google of, right-wing internationalist conspiracy. They're still around, by the way, the John Birch Society. But the 90s, it really kind of kicks up. And so let's begin. We begin with that 1987 revelation that there was a Reagan era thing for this. But you got the Holy Trinity in the 90s of anti-government, the activist Department of Justice, Clinton era issues. And they go in sequential order: Ruby Ridge, Waco, and then Oklahoma City. So how old are you? How aware are you of those things? I think I did not know about Ruby Ridge until I became an adult and I went back. But I remember Waco as it happened, and I certainly remembered Oklahoma City when it happened. What do you remember of all this? And if you don't know about Ruby Ridge, we'll go through it after this.
Right. I think you and I are the same age, Justin. I was born in 83, so I'm 41, about to hit 42. So yeah, I'm the exact same way. I do not remember anything about Ruby Ridge. I remember my dad telling me about it at one point. So I was fairly young, but I don't remember absorbing much other than just the government came in and shot somebody they shouldn't have shot. And then, of course, I do remember the Branch Davidians and David Koresh and all of that in Waco. And then I remember the Oklahoma City bombing with even more clarity, and the subsequent, trials and years of just that dominating the news landscape. Yeah. But as far as my own particular background goes, so I grew up I went to a private Christian school when I was very young, all the way up until 8th grade. And they were part of a kind of a fundamentalist movement, not quite, handling snakes level, but definitely the government's coming for all our guns. And
they were a pet store away from
yes. Yeah,
if only much. PetSmart had expanded in a different footprint, then you could have had snake handling.
Right. And so we kind of absorbed a lot of the nationalistic, very patriot focused side of that. And so while my parents were certainly not in any way on the radical side of that. Yeah. And they didn't align with a lot of the more radical side of it. There was kind of an understanding of, like, I guess an ability to understand why these things were thought, even if we didn't completely share in them. And so in that culture, you can grow a lot of things. It's very fertile for, government getting out of hand, and especially in an era of globalization, like what you were talking about. You're talking about people who are now think they're reading the Book of Revelations and they're like, oh, one world government, this is the beast and the harlot or whatever. And there was a lot that.
You can make any biblical analogy and I will just smile and nod, by the way. That is, I will trust you implicit. There's like certain things, Bible, scripture quotes, like somebody could just run a fake one by me and I would just be like, that's touching, deep.
So there was a lot of like, we're living in the end times and these are the things that'll happen before. I mean, if you ever, I assume you have not, given what a heathen you seem to be when I bring up the Bible, but there was a series of books. There was a series of books when I was not quite a teenager, called the Left Behind books. I'm sure you heard of them.
Sure.
Everybody heard of them.
No, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Did you read them?
I did not. No, I am aware of the broad strokes, which is that it is a fictionalization of the rapture. But our main characters they're believers, but they have been left behind and they do not know why, and they need to figure out why. Right.
It's close enough for for one world government work. So
exactly. Harry Potter for homeschool kids.
Yes. Oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. You have no idea how accurate. That's the most accurate thing you've ever said in your life. Wow. Yes, that is exactly what that is. Because it was a series,
right? It went. Oh
yeah,
it was
13, 14 books.
Huge hit.
There were movies. Kirk Cameron was in, or he was in a few of them, and then it kind of tanked. But anyway, there was that came out of this culture of looking at globalization, looking at the UN, and thinking the UN's going to come basically run our country, and which again, that is very much still alive today. I think it's just in smaller pockets. But I've without going too far into the weeds on it, I know people who are involved in state government situations where they have been concerned about the UN kind of slipping in through the back door and writing a lot of our legislation and enforcing it, and et cetera. So it's not gone, but back then it was the UN,
not the World Economic Forum or anything like that.
There's
the
that
UN
too.
Yeah,
the World Economic Forum,
UN
I think,
seems like a pretty feckless, ridiculous organization where nothing ever gets done except for parking tickets, right?
Right. Yeah, and censure. Don't forget censure.
Yeah, but it's we all got together. They're gonna get together and they're gonna recognize Palestine as a state. Which, for whatever you think of that situation, what do they get for it? Does did Palestine get a welcome box? Do they get a marker to draw, state lines or something? Are there state lines recognized? No, of course there's not going to be. So it's just going to be a thing that's said.
Yeah, no, and to your earlier point, people who are afraid of FEMA back in the 90s, you should want to go back to them and tell them, hey, fast forward for a few decades, and let me show you what FEMA's capable of, or rather not capable of.
Yeah, so let's get back to this kind of escalation here. Ruby Ridge happens in 1992, and if you're not familiar with it, please go ahead and it's very much worth a Wikipedia. I forget which podcast series I listened to, but it's an insanely gripping story, but it essentially boils down to this. There's a really racist dude with his family on a mountain, and he hates coming off the mountain because he hates everybody. And let me repeat, very racist, very ornery. He is the quintessential, just dude up on a mountain who wants to be left alone. Every second that he is down off his mountain, he is mad as hell, right? He hates everybody.
Right.
But the only people he can tolerate is this local militia, because at least they also agree that if the government comes, then they'll get together and shoot them, right? So it's he likes them. I believe it's the ATF thinks that the militia's running guns for something, right?
Right.
They wind up getting the man on the mountain to initially agree that he's going to rat out the people for running guns to somebody or whoever, and then eventually entraps him by setting him up to go sell guns to the militia, but then saying, "Oh, you sold guns to the militia, now you broke the law." And so the only law he broke was one that he was put up to by the government. So flash forward, he's gets rung up on charges. He's like, I don't agree. The only law I care about is God's law, not man's. I'm going to my mountain. Goes to his mountain. And so then we have the question, what do you do with the racist on a mountain? And the Department of Justice decides we're going to get him the hell off that mountain. He is going to face justice for this crime that we told him to commit. And what comes after that is insane. It is a multi-day showdown that involves, and I forget in which order, Paul Harvey, the legendary radio host who this guy loves. They get Paul Harvey to record a broadcast specifically for that guy because he doesn't trust the government, but he'll trust Paul Harvey. And Paul Harvey says, "Man on a mountain, you really need to come out. Don't worry, everything's fine." And then heartbreakingly, somebody shoots his wife, dead.
As so she's holding their like newborn son or their child.
Heartbreakingly, the standoff continues. The government says they don't know that she's dead. They don't even know that they shot her. But the corpse of these children's mother is in the kitchen for days as this goes on. And this case, which is by far the most sympathetic of the three things that happens, is the seed that on some level inspires the other two. That this is the example of to what ends will this Department of Justice pursue you and your family? They'll come up to this mountain grump's home and shoot his wife in the head. And that is extraordinarily potent for the people around a young Josh Jennings, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I mean, I do want to stress, I don't think anybody that I was running around with or in their circles, they may have had some sympathies for some of the later stuff, like the Branch Davidian situation. Yeah. I don't know. I think that sympathy would be as far as it went. I mean, I was never around people who were actively,
no. I think if anything,
they were stockpiling them, but they weren't taking them up.
No, I think it was a counter against what do you have to fear? It was the answer to that. It's like, what do I have to fear? Well, they went up to this dude's house and shot his wife. That's what I have to fear.
Didn't they later shoot his son? I mean, am I remembering that incorrectly?
I don't know. I think
they did, but I might not be remembering the story correctly. Regardless, later they certainly did burn down an entire complex in Waco, Texas, and kill a bunch of people.
That's
there.
90. So Ruby Ridge is 92. Waco's 93. By the way, this is Bill Clinton's getting elected in 1992. We have the Ross Perot surge, the idea of a new global trade thing. The big sucking sound is all the jobs going to Mexico, very famously. That's 93 is Waco, which is the siege of the Branch Davidian cult, which ending sympathetic. The Branch Davidians, not the most sympathetic. I don't know how it's looked at in the religious lens, but from the
many of them should have gone to prison, I'm sure.
Yeah, from the blue state perspective, nobody was like, "Damn, this David Koresh really deserves his place to ply his trade."
He should have gone to prison just for his guitar and singing skills. By the way, okay, all right. So a little bit of moment of levity, but also super dark. You want to know the worst joke I've ever made, or one of the worst jokes I ever made? It was to our friend Heaton. I was driving down to Austin to see him for his birthday, where you and I hung out as well. And he had warned me. He said, the traffic through Waco is going to be really, really bad as you're going through it. And I'm like, okay, it's Waco. I live in the DFW area. I'm fine. I get on the other side of Waco and I call him immediately, and he answers. And the first thing I said is, they should not have stopped at burning one building down there.
Real talk, as if the town didn't need more of a bad reputation. It is, you could awful. Get like, honestly, you live in the DFW. I live in Austin. We would essentially be in the same metro area if it were not for Waco. Like, you can get from my house to your house in like 2.5 hours if it's not for. And also the thing is, you never know how long it's going to be. It could be 15 minutes, nothing on the road. It could be an hour and a half that you're just sitting in traffic, and all you have to do is look at the stupid Baylor football stadium and a bunch of billboards for whatever Home and Gardens television show that has taken over the town. It's like, buy a candle holder and look at Ken Starr's favorite football program while you think about all the Branch Davidians burning in their own building.
It's either Tatooine or Coruscant between us at any given moment.
So then you have Waco, which obviously ends in the horrifying end of the siege, which is looked at, I think rightly so in historical lenses, a bridge too far for the American government. But for anybody who thought, oh my God, they're going to come up to my house and shoot my wife, Now they're going to come to my church and they're going to light it on fire. Right. And they're going to kill everybody inside of the church, whether or not they believe that was, culty or not. Like that it was the violation of a sacred thing by way of a federal power, because, it was very much a Clinton administration led system.
Janet Reno. I remember hearing that name an awful lot on the Rush Limbaugh program.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, also, to take that into account, the fact that this is like prime Rush. Like,
the rise of the American right in the media in a way that maybe hadn't been there for maybe ever. I don't know. You know more about the
pre-Fox
political media than I do.
Fox News doesn't start until I think 96 or 97. And Rush Limbaugh is the number one thing on radio, especially in the areas of the country that loved him. It was huge, right? And again, it's like to go back to old versions, American politics is kind of like, a James Bond series. Like, there's just so many movies. We've gone 20, 30. But if you go back a few movies, like the foil for Rush Limbaugh is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is the quintessential example of everything that the Rush Limbaugh ethos hates about Democrats. He is slick talking. He is philanderous. He has secret agendas, right? That's like the big thing that Rush Limbaugh would. It's like the fact that he was so slick is the cover for what is happening under the hood. And we're talking about early 90s stuff. Forget any Barack Obama era stuff. But this is the beginning of the Hillary ethos. The beginning of the Hillary ethos is she's the hidden communist under the veneer of Bill Clinton. And it all starts with Hillary Care back in the early 90s, where it's like, oh, you think he's just don't stop thinking about tomorrow. And he's charming and he's young and he's a baby boomer. Like, oh, no. Well, I'll tell you that right under the hood is the real hidden threat. Listeners, it is the entire decimation of your healthcare system with co-president, Lady President Hillary Clinton.
My dirty little fantasy is someday doing a show with you where you just pretend to be Rush Limbaugh the whole time. And I'll tape a picture on my computer screen of him over you. And I will just pretend I'm being interviewed by Rush Limbaugh.
When you have your standoff with the DOJ, I'll do my private Rush Limbaugh thing for you, like Paul Harvey did for Ruby Rich.
That'll be the nicest thing ever right before I die.
No, you survive. Your wife.
My wife. Okay.
Tell her to duck.
Insurance time.
So all of this supercharges the idea of the FEMA narrative, right? Because even though FEMA had no connection to it, right? And this is where I do see, let's bring it kind of into the modern lens. There's a lot of the stuff that happens now with the ICE conversation, because it's not per se anything that ICE hasn't always done, right? There's a question about the scale of it. The escalation is more tied to what people see other parts of the Trump administration doing. That they see escalation, they see non-traditional or extra constitutional fudgings of things. They see expansions of executive power, and they're like, sure, on paper, this is just money for ICE. And yes, we have whatever problem we have about ICE taking certain people, but what we are really worried about is them coming to my house because I have an I'm with her bumper sticker still on my car. And they're going to arrest and they're going to deport me. And now all of a sudden the line once they have the tool's the important part. The line is what's going to be fudged. And now it's not just going to be, oh, well, your papers aren't right. Now it's going to be, you are an un-American. You are somebody who's not sufficiently patriotic, and therefore we need to remove you. And congratulations, you're now going to be in CCOT.
Right. Yeah. And to be fair, as with the issues surrounding FEMA, it's not like there's no precedent whatsoever for some concerns. I think the situation with ICE, and you're right. There's a whole lot of heartburn that I think probably, I don't know if it's not necessary or if it's just not necessary that it be the only thing that we're discussing. Obviously, everything we're hearing right now is all of the deportations are racist, blah, 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 blah. To move it into the territory,
depending on who you listen to, obviously, yes. hotly contested.
Yes. Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is that's the part that the conversation is mostly focused on, is whether or not it's a problem from that lens, and to some extent an economic lens, things like that. But then it's interesting to travel off down this side road into how concerned are people really that there's going to be a level of unchecked power to the degree that this becomes Trump's private army. I guess first and foremost, what I look at is there a willingness on the part of the people who it would be necessary for them to dissolve so much of the American infrastructure, political infrastructure, that they're willing to do it. I don't think Donald Trump is going to try to stay in power.
Look, we can logically look at this in the same way that we can logically look at, like, why not FEMA is going to do it, right? But no, I do think that it's interesting. It is interesting that, like, there is, I don't know where the divide is. I know that in the 90s, you were really only surrounded by the people that you were going to be surrounded by. And maybe there would be some mainstream culture, but like finding in a bygone era, possibly blissful bygone era, that it was hard to find political content in mainstream media. There's a reason why Rush Limbaugh was as popular as he was, because that was where somebody on a broadcast platform was talking like people talked in their hometowns.
Right.
Otherwise, you would get vaguely center left interpretations of the news. That was kind of the history of broadcast mediums from their inception.
And a lot more compartmentalized without the ubiquity of the internet that we have today.
But still, I don't know if we're any more intellectually diverse than we would have been otherwise, because now it's like we still just surround ourselves, but it's by choice as opposed to by geographical location, the kind of people that we want to surround ourselves with. And so I think for some people, likely some people listening, the idea that ICE is the budding Gestapo is like real, and they hear people talk about it in the same way that there were people but oddly, I think red state America is like, do people really believe that? Come on,
right.
Don't be ridiculous.
Don't
be
completely on the other side,
And now, but it's the exact opposite, because in the 90s, there's a bunch of effete liberals saying like, Jesus, what are these rednecks like screaming about? Like, God, take a breath.
Right. Yeah, no, I think you've absolutely pinpointed it, that it's funny too, because as somebody who grew up in conservative circles, like fairly, hyper conservative circles, and still maintains a fair bit of that conservatism myself in my old age, I tend to think of the side that leans into conspiracy theories more frequently as the conservative side. It's one of I don't know if it's just like a kind of a genetic predisposition, or not literally genetic, but you know what I mean, intellectually genetic predisposition, or I don't really know what it is, but I think it's possible that one, that I'm wrong, that I notice it more on the right because I am of the right.
Yeah.
And I've distanced myself just enough that I can allow myself to try to examine these things. And I just haven't run around in the right circles to see it as much on the left. But this is a fantastic example of like, people can do you here's my question to you, because when you first proposed this to me, I was like, okay, I definitely see the parallel. Do you think it is as do you think it's as widespread a level of kind of low level panic on the left as it was on the right for that? Do you think it's as I mean, don't get me wrong, I know people personally in my life who think that. I'm not going to tell the story.
Who think what? FEMA or ICE?
ICE.
ICE.
Yeah.
That ICE is a Gestapo in waiting.
Yes, absolutely. And I was going to tell a story, but there's a chance it might get back to them. I'd prefer not to, but I'll tell you later. But the point is, there are people, yes, who I think they're very, in fact, I'm sympathetic to them because I grew up around people who thought that way just on the other side. But my question is, do you think that it's as, that it's as out there and that it's as big of a scare now as it was then?
Well, let's look at some of the art that was created around the FEMA conspiracies. In 1994, Linda Thompson releases America Under Siege, a documentary that purported to show concentration camps under construction in Beech Grove, Indiana. So 1994, man, to do an independent documentary in 1994, that took some doing, man. That was not, we're not in an era of shot on iPhone and edited on iMovie.
True.
That is time and effort. And then Jim Keith's Black Helicopters Over America, which, to your point, the iconography of this then became the black helicopter, which, by the way, I don't know if I've seen other color helicopters. Do helicopters come in other colors? Like, I
don't know. I just always knew
usually black.
You knew it was a black helicopter because they lowered longer ropes.
But Jim Keith wrote a book called Black Helicopters Over America, Strike First for the New World Order. In it, he reproduced maps of alleged FEMA detention camp locations throughout the United States. So would we see similar things today? And I would say, I mean, I have not searched in reference to this podcast, but I would not be shocked if there's plenty of YouTube stuff. I think I would probably say that you'd need 10 times the runtime of whatever America Under Siege would be to kind of go pound for pound to it, because it's easier to make YouTube content than it is to do what she did in 94. But like,
I literally saw today CNN, and I don't know how comparable this is because of that kind of disparity between then and now. But I mean, CNN took I think it's what is it called? Alligator Island or whatever the
Alligator Alcatraz.
That's the one. Alligator Alcatraz. They took photos, both of the exterior and interior, that are available, and they built this 3D model that you'd have to go and look at the video of it, but it basically makes it look way scarier with the 3D model than just looking at the pictures themselves, which in my opinion are scary enough. But so there's no doubt that there's a lot of news hype about it, whether or not that's permeating the kind of the membrane far enough in the American consciousness to. I mean, I hope not. I hope it doesn't turn it into. I do think
that we are in a budding golden age for liberal conspiracies. If you look at, the Blue Anon, as I've called it, our friend Edinger Mentum has written a lot about this, but the conspiracies that Elon Musk stole the election by way of Starlink, and that Donald Trump's an illegitimate president and Kamala Harris is the duly elected president of the United States, like, that's real. That's absolutely real. Like, that is I don't want to check the stats right now, but I know it's over 70,000 people that are on the biggest subreddit, which is where it's largely concentrated. And now, at least the last time that I checked it a couple days ago, it's pretty much become an Epstein conspiracy subreddit. Like we are in this is prime time for conspiracies on the liberal side of the aisle, in my opinion.
The irony, by the way, of the Trump stole the election thing is that would have been the contention years ago if Trump hadn't spent the last 4 or 5 years pretending that the other side stole the election. Because you can't.
Well, again, it's like, watch the previous movies. Like, don't just show up don't just show up to Transformers when they have dinosaur Transformers, and don't understand that there was a first movie where they just introduced who Optimus Prime was. Like,
and yes, it had Shia LaBeouf, but he hadn't gone crazy yet.
No, he was great. It was great. They were very, very popular. Megan Fox was extraordinarily hot. Like we've had election conspiracies for as long as we've had elections. And I don't mean American elections. I mean to go back to Greece. Like, people have always questioned the results of whether or not things were done in a fair capacity. One of the things that's been totally memory hold, and it's only kind of coming back up recently because we're talking about Russiagate again, but there was a budding version, after Trump wins and everybody's in shock and people are trying to figure out what the new reality is going to be. There was a
Trump 1 or Trump 2?
1.
1. Okay. All right.
You had this brief blip of the idea that Russia hacked the machines, because that was the last conspiracy theory for the Democrats in 2004, was that Bush hacked the machines, the Diebold machines in Ohio.
Right.
This was written about extensively, right? This was not a fringe thing. This was in major media outlets that some people believe that the Diebold machines had been hacked and that John Kerry should have won the election.
Right.
And so there was a brief thing about, election machines, insecure. And there was a documentary on HBO about it that pointed out a lot of the stuff that is well known. Yes, you can hack election machines. Like, does that mean that elections are totally insecure? No, because thankfully we have built an incredibly Byzantine and weird system of how to register elections that it's nearly impossible to steal an American election expressly against the will of the populace. Like, it would be nearly impossible to get away with it. But still, on low level stuff, it is possible, and it does happen.
Of course.
But yeah, that was totally memory hold when Trump is like, the machines, they rigged the machines. And then it was like, no. Now election machines are super safe, the most safe, and blah, blah, blah. And now it's back to
the weird thing was that you knew people who genuinely believed that there was no fraud. And it's like, that is as ridiculous an idea as that the entire election was stolen. Maybe. I mean, that's on the same level.
It just also got us away from the real questions, which I think, should have been front and center. And I tried to talk about, which was like, all right, COVID's going on. We're worried about spread of COVID. Yeah. So you want to adjust voting rules. Okay. What are the adjustments going to be? How do we mitigate against fraud if we're changing it? Because I'm not saying all mail voting is fraudulent. Most mail voting isn't. I'm saying if we went from almost no mail voting to a majority mail voting, then you might not have caught everything. Things might slip through the cracks, right? Like, if you were trying to cheat, that would be the place where if I were designated to try and cheat, I would very much try to test that new expansion, because that's the most likely place that you'd be able to change things, at least on the margins. And then everything just got crazy from there. I don't know. But I do think those conspiracies are back, right? Election conspiracies are back. And now, the Epstein stuff is just its own little pocket universe of everybody's own grab bag of like.
I keep checking out of the Epstein thing, and my basic thing is like, tell you what, let me know when something actually happens, and I will check back in. Unfortunately, and God bless people like you who don't really have a choice in that, because you have to follow it everywhere it goes, even though you know that it's not going to go anywhere for a while.
I keep getting called on television to talk about it. That's like, people are like, like, please, I want to beam you from Abu Dhabi to the entire Arab world so you can talk about Epstein. And it's like, I don't want to talk about it in my personal life. Like, why do I need to talk about it to Great Britain and Abu Dhabi and everybody who watches Newsmax too?
Well, because the world needs your opinion.
Yeah.
They're asking. Jesus. They're hungrily asking, Justin.
God help them. God help them. God help them all. Well, this has been a great conversation. Josh Jennings, where can people find you?
So you can find me at joshjennings.substack.com. I just started a Substack for promoting my creative endeavors, one of which is my newest book, which if I may here drop a little plug. If you go to joshjennings.substack.com, you can pre-order the Kindle edition of my new book, which is called Space Tractor and Other Science Fiction Short Stories. It is a collection of science fiction short stories, some of them funny like that one, and some of them not so funny, and some adventure and action. Basically, just a great science fiction short story collection. Yeah. Anyway, that is available for pre-order now. What's the premise of your
saddest science fiction short story in that collection?
The saddest one?
Yeah.
The annihilation of an entire alien race out of revenge.
And you couldn't punch that up? You couldn't work a punchline in there?
Oh man, really? This is a fail on my part professionally. I should have seen the gleam in your eye that said, I don't really mean what I'm asking you, Jennings.
No. I love science fiction short stories, and I will personally be getting
you a copy.
I will very much encourage everybody to go purchase it, because there are few people as creative and funny and interested in ideas and concepts as Josh Jennings. It just brought to my mind the way you described it. I think it was Freaks and Geeks, but it was one of the creators of that was talking about or Judd Apatow, I think. Yeah, he was doing Freaks and Geeks, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. We wrote it as a comedy, and then some of the jokes didn't land, and we were like, no, that's the drama. That's the drama part. any joke we write that's awkward, like, no, it's teenagers. It's because they're teenagers. That's really dramatic. You should think back to your childhood. But anything you laughed at, yeah, that's comedy. That's our jokes. We wrote those specifically for you to laugh at. Aren't we brilliant blenders of those two things?
That's actually a really good way to kind of retcon your own work. I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that they had a cast that all became like, movie stars, but
of course. Yeah.
Good for them.
So by the way, the book, it's like I said, it's available for pre-order now on Kindle, but you can also, I believe October 16th is my birthday is the release date for paperback and audiobook. And I do highly recommend the audiobook, because the person that the book's dedicated to is an audiobook narrator friend of mine. He's one of the best in the world, in my opinion. And he is actually narrating the audiobook. And
that's phenomenal.
It will basically be, you will be hearing that book in the voice that I wrote with that voice in my head. So
that's great. That's great. All right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Justin, thanks for having me. Anytime you want me on, I'll come joke with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, until the black helicopters get us both. And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, brought to you by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Our producer is Will Saddleberg. You can send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find clips of the show. Justin R. Young on TikTok and X. On YouTube, our great home. It is politics. If you believe in keeping this kind of content independent, big, fun, hilarious, well, you gotta give me money because that's what I need to keep doing it. PayPal.me/PAYJURY. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3 Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. I actually wasn't able to get to the P.O. Box because Bella was sick for a little bit. And then I went, and a friend of the show, Lucas, had been on a road trip and had been writing postcards the entire time. And so I just got like 9 postcards. What a delight. If you'd like to send me anything, Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. Only place you get the bonus content, though, is our Substack. You can find that at takepoliticsseriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. That's $12 a month, $3 a week, however you want to figure it. $99 for the whole gosh darn year. That's less than $1 an episode when it all comes down to it. When you add up all the episodes that you get, it's a good value. I like to think so. But it is only our foundational tier that gets their name read at the end of the show, like these fine folks. Sonny, L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes, oh yeah, it's Adam, Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, A Dog Named Checkers, Gloria, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? Well, one place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. I don't know who's on next week, but I'm sure they'll be great. I hope you have a great late summer weekend. Till next time, friends, this is your old pal, Justin Robert Young, saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics, but this is the only one that dares discuss. Oh, 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.